Okay, hello everybody. Last session. Okay, so I am here to talk about building a future together. So where we've been, I want you to know the Life Raft Group got started over the internet, chat groups, before Facebook was around, believe it or not. And patients were chatting over the internet. It was actually not even a GIST chat. It was called leiomyosarcoma because people didn't know they had GIST. And they started talking about, oh, there's this KIT protein and there's this trial called STI 571 and we might be eligible for it. People should test to see if they have KIT. And lo and behold, that's where people learned that they had actually not leiomyosarcoma, they had GIST, and that they could be eligible for this trial. And ultimately, that's been our history. I mean, it really snowballed from there. And one of the patients on that group said, you know, we're each other's life raft. You know, we can jump on and be there for each other, you know, helping to navigate this rare disease. So that's where the name came from somebody within the community. And you could see some of the pictures from the past. Actually, David, you're up there, visiting Novartis back in the day, handing a check to our research team, local group meetings. Joy, I think you might see somebody familiar on that slide. You know, today we service over 3,000 patients from over 62 countries, and we really do recognize the holistic experience of helping to treat patients physically, mentally, psychologically. We really look at the whole big picture and help thousands of people navigate this disease. So I want you to know that our whole team speaks to patients every day, and we see this data in action, making just patients' lives easier and ultimately helping to save lives. And I just want to give you a couple examples. A couple of months ago, I was talking to a gentleman named Rod, and he's been on imatinib for a while now, but he said, you know, recently I've gotten this rash, and I just can't shake it. And I'm going from provider to provider, and this rash is bad. Where did it come from? And I said, you know, are you on generic or are you on brand? And did you check to see if maybe your generic may have changed recently? Because sometimes pharmacies might change the manufacturer. And he said, you know what? Nobody ever mentioned that to me. So he went and he looked into it, and lo and behold, that was the case. And you know, the story is that he actually was able to find out that the generic did actually change, and he was able to get that resolved and go back onto his original manufacturer, and he's doing great. But I'm sure the people in this room know that a rash may seem like small to some, but the people in this room know that it can really affect your life. And you might skip a dose, or you might not take the medication because it's really bad, and that can ultimately lead to your tumor progressing. So it's really important to you know, share that information with us, how we can help you navigate. But you know, what's really special is with our data combined with the quick thinking and expertise of our team, we're really able to quickly find resources and ideas to help you navigate throughout your journey. And I just want to give you another example of in the top middle. There's a patient named Steve, and Steve came to us. He had actually a melanoma diagnosis, and he found out through some scans that there was this tumor that arose in his small intestine, and actually multiple tumors they discovered, and he's never heard of this disease. His doctor's never heard of this disease. I'm sure this sounds familiar to many of you. And we were able to get Steve on the line and talk through options with him, and we immediately connected him to the NIH, to actually Dr. Blakely. And Dr. Blakely did surgery, many hours of surgery. He actually coded on the table, and they revived him, and he was on life support but they did just dramatic surgery. He is so thankful. Dr. Blakely saved his life, and we were able to get him to Dr. Blakely. And this man is so thankful because you see all those, he fostered and adopted 9 children. Those children wanted him to come home. And it's just a beautiful thing that we were able to help him. And I have to say that it's not just the data, it's our small but mighty team that really helps, like over 25 years of experience, help our patients navigate their disease. And it really is, it's what we make, it's the magic that happens along the way. And that's really like the Life Raft Group model. So although our model is patient-focused and data-driven, we weren't always influential in the scientific field. For several years, and we still have a newsletter, but we were publishing data from our registry in our private newsletter, which was only going to like a finite amount of people. And that evolved into like an LRG Science publication, and then that evolved into a GIST journal. But slowly we started getting approached by the scientific community to start collaborating with them. How can we publish together? And we started publishing in peer-reviewed scientific articles and having posters and presentations at scientific conferences. And I think you might recognize somebody on this slide. Our very own Denise Evans had the pleasure last month to present at a big medical conference called ASCO. And she presented about leveraging patients working with researchers to help improve outcomes in GIST. And it really highlighted that sort of synergy of us working with the research community and the outcomes that have come along the way. And you could see even some of the posters that we've presented in the past couple years. And in fact, just recently, there's going to be a new science conference that's starting just for GIST, specifically for researchers and early career investigators. That's specifically for GIST. And the hosts who used to be in our research team approached us, and they said, would you be interested in participating in this meeting? And would you be willing to host a roundtable on a topic? And would you be able to help support this conference? And it was I think it's a really exciting moment to be invited to be in the driver's seat alongside of these researchers to help really think about what the future holds for GIST. And we've even seen that with some success with changing guidelines. So I think you heard from some of the presentations that there's clinical guidelines, there's pathology guidelines, and that's sort of the instructions that these providers use to help diagnose and treat the disease. Well, with our patient registry, we were able to come up with an algorithm of the likelihood of a certain subset of GIST patients, the SDH subset. And we said, you know what, we could identify more of these patients if we just did a simple stain up front, knowing it's a gastric GIST. So we worked with a team of pathologists, and we got it published, and we got these indications changed in the pathology guidelines to do SDH staining up front. And then 5 years later, we said, have we made a difference? Well, I have to say, we have learned that we've been able to identify more SDH patients because we've been able to change these guidelines. And what does that mean? What does that mean that we're changing guidelines? That we're publishing in journals, that we're having posters at conferences. One of our board members said, I have no idea what it means to have a poster. You think of a science fair, like, what does that mean? But it's actually really important. It means that our hard work is paying off, and that we're starting to be recognized, and we're starting to be invited into places and making waves in the science community. And the pharmaceutical companies are wanting to know we want to know what the perspective of these treatments are. And the clinical oncologists want to know, I want to know about this rare tumor type and how it behaves. And so this is really exciting to be able to collaborate with them more. And I think we're seeing, as we were just talking about trials this morning, there are more funded GIST trials than there have ever been before. And that's a good place to be in, and hopefully we can continue to have more. So I just want you to know that this is not just a result of our hard work. This is also your hard work too, because you're contributing your data, you're contributing tissue, you're helping to fund this effort, you're caring for one another. You could have fought this disease alone, but you said, I'm gonna help you and we're gonna work together to do this. And a lot of you here today, I know feel that, being at this meeting. So I just think that it's just wonderful to see all the connections that have been made over time, and I think that we've even heard some really special friendships that have come along the way. I'll just highlight the Gister Sister Snowflakes. I mean, this group, and I think they've shared throughout the weekend, they have such a special bond. They've met through the Life Raft Group. They text each other all the time. They're there for each other during scans and appointments, and I hope that continues. I hope there's more groups that can come and blossom from this meeting. There's another story that I heard where there was an esophageal GIST patient who was recently diagnosed, and Carolyn connected this esophageal patient with another one and said, you know what, you guys are similar, you should connect. Well, one of these patients accompanied the other to surgery at the NIH recently, and I said, that is just the kindest thing to be there for them. And the other patient left thinking that the surgery was complete and successful, and then the caregiver called her and said, you know what, she's going back into surgery. And she turned around and went back to help support her. I mean, that is absolutely incredible. I don't know if Rob is here, but yeah, Rob was saying we got to care more for one another. And those are examples of how we can do it. So, together we've built the largest GIST patient registry in the world that has transformed the lived experience of nearly 3,000 patients into evidence that puts the patient community at the center of clinical innovation. Our mentor program serves over 200 patients. Our patient support groups, our webinars reach over 1,000 patients all over the world. And you could see that the LRG actively participates in scientific conferences and partners with major institutions to help find research for new treatments. And here's just another example where we're now getting invited into places we've never been invited before. There's pictures of us meeting with the head of the NIH, with the president of ASCO. As you can see, reporting on some of our data at major conferences. So we need your stories. We need your data, your advocacy, your drive for a future that can drive a cure for this disease. So where are we going? It has been an honor to be with the Life Raft Group for nearly 20 years. I've been in this executive director role for a little over 2 years. And I want to be able to shape the future of the LRG with you, because we want to really stick to the heart of the mission. And I believe that there are 3 clear goals that we can do to get there. First, double our reach. I want to double our reach to the GIST community. So you may not know this, but our staff knows that when we look at our membership, only 200 patients reach us every year from around the world. And if you know some of the stats, 3,000 to 5,000 GIST patients are diagnosed each year in the United States. What does that mean? There's a clear gap. We need to find these patients. More patients knowing about us, they have the opportunity to become a member, which means that we have more lives to save. So since becoming an executive director, we have prioritized our social media presence, and we have increased it by over 400%. But we actually, despite that exponential growth, there are still some limitations. So we actually primarily reach, if you look into our data, our membership remains primarily Caucasian and clustered around big cities and the coastal areas, despite just affecting ethnicities and geographic areas equally. So the repercussion translates into data. Caucasian GIST patients actually tend to live longer with the disease than their minority counterparts. So, and this is true not just for GIST, but this is also true for other diseases and cancer. And so, just to quote our previous executive director, Norman Scherzer, I understand, but this is unacceptable. So what we are trying to do is engage with diverse communities to try addressing this issue. We would like to create a health equity council and get volunteers to come up with like a strategy about how can we address this issue? How do we reach different pockets of the communities in rural areas and different types of volume centers? So we're looking for volunteers to help us with this. The next thing is we want to gain a deeper understanding of our members. We need to truly know what patients need so we can continue to be their voice. And I'd like to briefly discuss some work that our volunteers are working on. I just mentioned Rod, he's involved in this, Natalie, Michelle, Jen, Carolyn, and others. And essentially what they've done so far is they've developed some surveys, and we started sending it out, but it's like a process, a work in progress, and we really wanted to know, well, how are you getting information? Where are you getting this information from? What information do you need? Just to give us a sense of how do we improve that dissemination? How do we improve our communication? How do we improve our reach? And it was really fascinating because of the patients that answer this survey, 16% of those patients found out about the Life Raft Group from their physician. Why aren't more physicians talking about the Life Raft Group with their patients? And that's something that's really important to us. So we actually got a grant to help get access to a database that has a whole list of providers that have had like a touch point with GIST. And the plan is, and this has to be very strategic, of reaching out to this database of providers and introducing the Life Raft Group to them. How can they find ways to introduce the Life Raft Group to their patients? How can we work with them? So that is in the works, and we're so thankful to this volunteer task force to help us with this outreach project. The next thing is accelerating research through innovative technology. So we've just heard about AI. I think technology is changing. My phone just broke last week, and I was forced to get a new phone. I liked my old phone, but they forced me to get a new phone because technology is changing. And I think that it's been over 2 decades in the making of us building this system and building this registry, but it's time to enhance it. And I think that it's really the culmination of what is so important to the Life Raft Group. It's our wisdom and our passion that gets combined, our heart and our brain. And so I think what we're trying to do to enhance the system with making it easier for patients to navigate, having it be a one-stop shop of information with a dashboard and reporting mechanism. I think Sanju might have some really great tools. We're working also with Ian, who's here, who's helping us, and others. We would like to find a way to integrate into the health record systems with proper consents and HIPAA in place. We're still trying to find a way to make that happen, but finding ways to automate so there's less manual uploading and hunting down patients for information, but to get sort of that machine learning, artificial intelligence, to take some of that text, populate our data fields, and then bring it back to the patient community. What have we learned from that? How do we make this easier for you to navigate your disease? How do we match clinical trials? He mentioned that. Actually, that's something that we're very interested in doing with this new enhancements. So all these things are really important to us, and we've invested a lot of funding to help enhance this registry, and we really truly believe that this will help revolutionize patient care today and the next generation of just patients that come along the way. So Sanju and I didn't coordinate, but yes, data is really important. Data and evidence really help save lives. And I feel like we've become thought leaders in data and science by creating this patient registry. We've really moved mountains to break down silos. And I have to say that through that data, just like I mentioned that pathology guideline example, we've also really reflected on new projects to work on. So Jerry Call, who's our data analyst, last October was at a sarcoma conference called CTOS, and he introduced a new project called the Global GIST Risk Collaboration. And this project is also really important. Right now, when you go into your physician's office, there's different tools, but they have risk models. And they use these models to determine what is your risk of getting a recurrence. But currently, these risk models do not factor in mutation. And I think we know by now that mutation is really important in the world of GIST. So we've approached a number of different institutions from around the world, and we said, we need to create a new risk model that really factors in mutation in terms of this model. So it's an IRB study. We're going to be contributing our data to it. So many other institutions are contributing their data, and we really hope that this can be transformational in the GIST community. And in addition to that type of collaboration, it's been really exciting because some of these we've been starting to ask, like I mentioned, being asked to be into spaces we've never had before. For the first time, we were asked to help fund and support a GIST clinical trial. The Life Raft Group has never funded a clinical trial before, but last year we did. And it's a really exciting opportunity to be at a point that we can help advance science and bring treatments to these patients. And we've even invited one of our patients to be who's our science team member to be on the committee to look at the protocol development, to offer patient perspective in terms of that treatment, in terms of that trial design. So I want you to think about what you can do with our new registry. We'll be able to use patient-powered science to create an even deeper connection with our community and ultimately a model for success. And that data and evidence can really help bring life-saving drugs into patients' hands. I want to give you another example. So I tend to talk a lot to the global patients, just like Piga, who helps with our global relations. And there are times that it's really heartbreaking that there are patients from around the world that come to us and say, you have this medication in the United States, but we don't have it in our country. And there's recently a case of a PDGFRA D842V patient from Australia. And he came to us and he said, I need to get this medication called avapritinib. It looks really good, very successful for my subtype, but it's not available in Australia. And he currently is paying $25,000 US a month for this medication coming from Germany. Insane, right? So the Life Raft Group, as I think Carolyn says, we don't leave anybody alone. We try to help anybody wherever they are. And we have worked on reaching executive leadership of the pharmaceutical company, looking at another disease that has this drug approved. How can we collaborate together? How can we pull our data together? And what I think is so important is that if we can get more data and evidence, that can help. You can use that to approach these health authorities to say, this treatment works, the burden of this disease is shown through this data, and it's so important that we find ways to get this drug approved in this country. You've seen Piga do that successfully in Chile. So that's why data is so important. So I want you to think about contributing to our community's future. We must invest in the future of not just ourselves, but the GIST patients that will come after us. And this whole weekend, you may be thinking about what your own personal reflections are of what you've learned for your own situation or your loved one, but I want you to think about how can you help the next generation of GIST patients, what you can do to help further the mission. And we all play an important part in driving our mission forward, and I want to just give you some examples of what you can do to help build this future. First, mention social media. I know not everybody's social media people, but think about being open to it, or in other ways, you can work with newspapers and share your story. GIST patients used to do that back in the day. We saw a lot more news articles about GIST. But share your story on social media. Start a Facebook or Instagram fundraiser. If you have connections, this is so important, if you have connections, foundations, businesses, banks, maybe there's opportunities for us to apply for a grant with them to help enhance our registry. Think about like the connections that you have. We've talked about how important the data is. Please contribute your data, contribute tissue. We are embarking on doing some incredible work with tissue. I mentioned Becky, who's a new member of our team. There's a patient who's about to have surgery. I just spoke to her at breakfast this morning. We're going to get that tissue to these institutions to start doing models on them. We are determined to get that tissue. So tissue is really important. Talking to your care team about the Life Raft Group is important. Volunteering. There was that volunteer table. I hope you all showed up at that volunteer table. I mean, it could be overwhelming for our staff, and we have to figure out how to manage that. But your skills and your expertise can be so valuable to us, and I'm serious when I say, like, we're a small team, and you see we work so well together, but we do need help. So think about how you can volunteer to help us. So in closing, I truly hope that you enjoyed this conference and that you were invigorated and that you took something from it, whether it's education, advice, a new friend that can help you through hard times. I know that, it's unlucky to get diagnosed with cancer, but I hope you feel lucky that you have a community to lean on that can help you through hard times. And I just want you to know that we have a big and bright future together, and I really want you in it. So I hope that you can be a part of it, and we're so thankful that you were here for this weekend. So thank you.